Hello everybody, welcome or welcome back, depending on the situation. Welcome to this last roundtable that closes off in a way the series of talks that we hosted with the Invisible Lines guys. For the ones of you that don't know, well, this talk is going to be in English, as was stated in the program, since this is a European project that went around all Europe, almost all Europe. So, and let me say in advance, sorry for my bad English, but we'll manage some way. So, for the ones of you that don't know, Invisible Lines was this very huge project, a very huge European project financed by the Creative Europe program, and with the head of Fondazione Cini in Venezia, and with a lot of partners, Amening and Bilbul on one side, Baobab and Tabuk from the Czech Republic, and Central Vapeur from Strasbourg. And the project was like 12 young artists. We selected them and sent them all over Europe in 3 workshops, with the very easy task to draw the invisible. So it was a very nice project, and the invisible, as we meant it, was supposed to be declined in different ways in each workshop. So we had the landscapes workshop in Czech Republic. We had the Revelations workshop in Venice, and the Borders workshop in Strasbourg. So we tried to explore together, mainly you, the invisible in a lot of different ways. And after these workshops, the project kind of ended its first part. It became 3 books that you can find in the bookshop, and I highly suggest you check them out because they are amazing, all 3 of them. And then exhibition started. There was already the exhibition in Tabuk, and now the Invisible Lines exhibition is here at Bilbul in the Academy of Fine Arts. So you should check it out. Elena, one of the 12 artists that did the workshop, built this amazing exhibition. It's a very nice experience. So to close things off, so we decided to host a series of roundtables, having the chance to chat all together the young artists from Invisible Lines and one of the guests of the festival. One old one. So in this case, we have, I start from my left and go all the way left. We have Manuele Fior, that already met the artist in Venice. Manuele Fior doesn't need any presentation, I think. But it's very, we will get to the theme of this talk later, but it's very central. I mean, we were very happy to, things si incastrano. Yeah, combined together very well. Then, on the left side of Manuele Fior, we have Omar Cheick. We have Clara Chotil and Léopold Prudon. I'm sorry. You can...
Prudon?
Thank you. My French is very bad. It's even worse than my English. So we decided each of these roundtables to be focused on one broad theme, which is linked in a way to the invisibleness of the project. And the topic of this roundtable is scenery, places, and locations, and what is on the maybe often on the background, and what encompasses all the narration. I mean, in comics you have characters, but you not always, but you often have also something beside them, surrounding them, a place where they walk and they talk. And but also comic books is a language, is a spatial language. I mean, the other place of the comic language is the page itself, and you can, it's a place on its own, and it lives on its own. We thought about this talk mainly because one of the key features of the Invisible Lines workshop was to have you move around a lot, and landscapes was one of the main themes of the first workshop, the main theme of the first workshop. But in every place you went, the place was not neutral, and it transpires in the stories you did. And we also liked to invite Emanuele to this talk because in all his work, as you may know, places are another character of the story. The super easy example is in Celestia, where the city of Venice is a very, very important part of the story, but this is something you can find all throughout your work. And so I would like to simply ask a starting question just to get the ball going, and then feel free to bounce off each other as you like. And we will get to the workshop later, but I wanted to ask how you see the environment when you are trying to do your drawings, your comic books. I mean, you all have very different approaches to comic books in general and to this topic in particular, but for each and every one of you, it seems like a central theme. I mean, it seems like something you think about or at least feel in a way. So this is like just to get the ball going, and then we'll get it from there. Who wants to start? You can. Okay. You can. Please. Yeah. And. Please go.
So thank you for inviting me at this round table. Everything you said is true, at least for me. I would say the most peculiar thing about spaces, maybe just to start, that there are two different kinds of spaces. It's very easy. It's the external spaces and the interior spaces. But this sounds like very clear, the definition, but it is not that clear. I mean, when I'm doing comics, for instance, when I did a book that is called 5,000 kilometers per second, the book was supposed to deal with spaces I lived in and I worked in, like Egypt, Norway, and Italy. But when I started the book, and of course, having worked as an archaeologist in Egypt, I had a lot of documentation, a lot of pictures of Cairo, Aswan. I said to myself, I won't go through all the pictures like copying the railway station of Cairo or the buildings. I didn't want to do like that. I just wanted to recall these spaces in my memory. So I packed all the pictures and I put it away. And I started something that sometimes I do with students that say, like, don't look at any picture. I mean, don't look at any documentation. It's a bit like on the contrary of what we do now, surfing in the internet and being submitted to an enormous amount of pictures. Just work with your memories. Also, it can also work with people. Don't look at pictures of people. Just remember one main thing of the guy or the girl or the boy or the kid that you want to depict. And so, in this way, exterior places become interior places, because what you put on paper is not what you really see in a picture on a Google Street View, but what you see in your internal movie that you play for yourself. And it's kind of interesting, because you leave a lot of things. You forget a lot of details that were there. I remember, for instance, drawing the rail station Ramses in Cairo. I just remember there was a huge highway that was always also almost scavalcando, come si dice, going over the station, and then there was a McDonald's sign. So this is not very distinctive of Egypt, but I recall this huge M of McDonald's, and then some arches, and then I just used these elements, and of course I used to remember a kind of color that could summon all the atmosphere. You know, the first thing when you go to Egypt is that you feel the substance of the air, because there's always a kind of a dust, a golden dust everywhere, that makes you feel have the perception that the air is not something invisible, as we're talking, but is something visible, that you go through it. And so I wanted that this element of space appears as the most important thing. Of course, for other kind of works, you just need to wash your memories and then open your eyes and then look at the things as they seem, at least as they seem to you. If I copy a building of or a street that I like, and I do a drawing, and if Paolo Bacilieri does the same thing, the drawings, they will be very different, because as Picasso said, if there are 23 ways of drawing a vase of flower, it's not because there are 23 kind of vase of flowers, not because we are different, but because there are 23 kind of realities. And this is for artists, I guess, something that is quite easy to understand. Yeah, so just to sum up all this weird talk I'm doing, is that you were ironic when you said that we should draw the invisible, but actually we always draw the invisible. It's our job, in a way. Someone has to do it. It's our job to draw invisible things and put it from the inside to the outside. Just one last thing, when I was doing my research for telepathy, for my books, and of course you go through a lot of shit, the publication or parapsychology, but you go also through a very interesting thing. For instance, that a lot of artists of the 20th centuries, like of course Dalí, but he was crazy, but also like Kandinsky and Juan Miró, they were convinced that telepathy existed, and their way of creating a grammar, I speak of course of Kandinsky, a grammar of spaces and colors, was the main point was to put the invisible, what is inside your emotion, to the outside, in a very in a grammar, like a. So this job has always been something that the artist, this language of sharing invisibility, is something that we always deal with, comic authors, painters, and also other artists, I guess.
I have to improvise, or there is a question?
Yeah, well, your comment was on point, and it was quite true. So Omar agrees. But no, the question was, how do you, since you all have different outputs, I mean, what Manuele was saying, I mean, there are multiple ways of of seeing things, because there are multiple ways things are, and I think this is quite evident in your work, because you all had the same task, so to speak, but the output is quite different. Not just because your style is different, but if what Emanuele and Picasso before him was saying. So in terms of space. The space, as we were talking about, how do you think about it when you have to draw it, if you have to draw it at all?
Space is wild. I mean, I woke up super late today, and I had to reach this place, but I didn't know the trace. So I was using maps and was hell because it was like working really shitty. And so I was always thinking like where I am now, and I was in the bus and thinking like every 5 minutes and checking where the fuck I am, I'm right, where I am. So I think it's quite important because space is the place where we are and where I am. And if I'm here, it's because there is a here. So it's something that it's subtle, but it's always there, and it's related with everything around, like being on time and being here, and the heating, the space, the woods on the floor get me a feeling that it's different from metal or steel or like fabric. So I really think that space polarized the subject and fix them in a dialogue. Was free jazz, sorry. Was free jazz. It's your free jazz.
No, but you have a really sensitive way of filling the space, and it's really, we can see it really well in your pages. For me, space like is the way is the way I enter a story. Actually, I come to comics in kind of a strange way. It's not what I've always been doing. I was an architect before, and like what the first thing that attracts me when I want to tell a story is where do I want to travel, and how can I use this time of drawing to just go somewhere. And so I think it is the first thing I think about is what is the from where am I going to look, where, and how can I travel, also how can I go from one image to another, and create some movement with using this with using comic, which has amount of images, and then how how the places that I'm going to represent will be related to each other in a page and create a new space there, which is the space of the, well, I mean, composition, which is something that really attracts me also to play with what image and what rhythm will be the result of the visual impression when you compose one image, and then maybe the characters arrive really after. Maybe I can imagine a position, but I really never think of a face and of an expression. I really think of the how do we enter the places, and how do we live them. So, yeah.
Yes, I think that like Clara, I would have wanted to be an architect, but I wasn't. But it was kind of my dream as a kid, and I think it had influenced after a while the way I was just making comics, like trying to build a space, like use the page as a space from the beginning and try to make a construction like I would do for a building somehow. And also, I think
for me, you are an architect. I mean, if you look at his book, it's so great in drawing spaces and buildings, and it's amazing. And you can really feel the temperature, and he is a great architect. So don't trust him.
Thank you, Omar. You're like my press agent.
That's the book.
17 euros.
It's called Shanghai Shangri, and it's great.
You cannot buy it there though, but on internet. So.
Advertising.
But the difference with an architect is that I cannot like, unlike Manuele Fior, I don't really know how to invent settings. I really like to go from reality and to be like inside the space and try to find in a certain space that is in reality to find something that will be that I could translate into something interesting and maybe beyond reality into the drawings, and try to find the link with the invisible towards the details of reality, as if it was kind of doors that let you enter to another space because of the memory that is contained into the space. Like when you are in a certain space, things have a certain shape that is related to the use of the space by the people that were there before. Like even you see just a empty cup of coffee on a table, it means something about what was there before, or just like the degradation of a building or anything. And this memory in itself, in reality, is like something magic in a way, and I think it can be translated into drawing also.
It's strange that you say that I invent spaces because I would like to have the ability of inventing spaces, and there are artists who can do it, like Moebius or Lorenzo Mattotti, but I think I never invented a space, a single space in my comics. They're all existing spaces in a way, you know?
Even in Venezia, because Venezia is kind of Venice, but it's also like something else.
There is not really big inventions. There are some existing buildings, and there are some, well, let's say maybe invented places, but just I shifted a bridge to another part of the campo, or I put another road on. So if you take a picture, it will not look like my drawing. But it's actually for me very tough. I would love to be someone who can invent a space. If you read the World of Edena of Moebius, you have inventions like almost every page of a new space, like a kind of pyramids, reversed pyramids, and so for me it's really tough. I would love to be able to do that.
Yeah, Moebius is basically my hero also.
Also Lorenzo Mattotti, for instance, is great as he manipulates the space, actually also very in a very not realistical way, with several points of fuite, to say la fuite de perspective, perspective point of okay, you know, focus points.
I really liked what all of you are saying, because I mean, having read a lot of times your works, it's like I suggest you do it after the talk, because you can really see how this world translates into those comics. I mean, I was thinking when Omar was talking that you were saying a lot about details I mean, the wooden floor and the stuff, like the ceiling, and your comics in the Invisible Lines project, at least, I mean, space and location is very present, but it's always like it comes out through details. I mean, like a ladder on a wall, and you just see the lowest part of the wall and the ladder on it. And then what you were saying about color is very, very on point. And if you take just a peek at your comics, it's very evident the importance of color in places, in space, and for you too is it's very evident in a good way and in a different way your architectural view. I mean, particularly for Clara, there is this kind of it's all just almost just suggests a suggestion, and you have these people that are like inhabiting that space, and it's also everything is like there and not there at the same time, while you are very, very, I mean, you want to be an architect. And
yeah, but being an architect, since we are speaking about architecture, and I'm really fond of it, it means a lot of things. I mean, I remember your drawings because we met in Venice, and this is your drawings, no?
No, yeah,
no?
This is
Clara. This is yours, okay? And so it's we put a drawing of mine. But also drawings of Omar. They show that the perception of space conceptually is very different. It's like taking a drawing of Le Corbusier, since we talk about a bit about architecture. You will never see the materials on a drawing. You will see like forms in perspective. You know? If you take drawings of Frank Lloyd Wright that represents like the Antichrist of Le Corbusier, you will see materials everywhere. If you go into a building of Frank Lloyd Wright, you go in di un animale. You go into the whole of an animal, you know? Everything is colored, is made of wood, is made of skin, there are carpets. If you walk through a building of Le Corbusier, everything is conceptual, intellectual. It's Euclidean. So space, it's a culture in a way. It's the product of our culture. And our drawings, I mean, reflects not only our personalities, but a kind of culture that is quite sometimes on the opposite. But the opposition of culture in an intellectual work or artistic work is not a clash of culture. No. It's a birth of a new culture.
Would like to. So I would like to go like onto the three workshops, starting from the central one, because one thing you all have in common is this, with all the differences of the case, but this experience of Venice. The second workshop, Revelations, took place in Fondazione Cini in Venezia, which is in the Isle of San Giorgio, which is a small island. As we were saying this morning, there is the Fondazione Cini, a church, and a bar that opens very late and closes very early. And so you are like in this weird place, inside a weirder, bigger place, which is Venice. And you draw Venice a lot, and you live there now. We will not reveal the exact address, so no worries. So, and you were tasked to capture the soul of the city in a way, and you did it on your own, not doing the Invisible Lines workshop. And so I would like to ask all of you, given what we were saying, that anybody sees space in a different way, like to do a portrait of Venice, like, and it can be whatever you want. I mean, something that happened during the workshop. I recall you were tasked to walk around during the morning and then come back and draw all you could. It could be an anecdote of what happened. It could be anything. And for you also, without the workshop part. So what Venice? Then you can check if things checks out with what they're saying and what they drew.
The island was super nice, but the restaurant, I mean, the portion were really, really small, but the wine was super good. And
Fondazione Cini is taking note.
It's an advice. What to say? I had nausea. This means that I'm not really used to be in Venice. So after something like one day, I started feeling the seasick, some sort of seasick, and nausea. That like all the time remind me that I don't belong to that place. So this space was communicating with me, with my body, and with my sickness. So I was always thinking about why I am here. I mean, I'm not meant to be here. I belong to another space, to another high, to another everything. I mean, so was always present this feeling, this subtle feeling of the space. Tell me, go away.
And do you think it shows in your story?
I talk a bit about that. I mean,
because it didn't struck me as a hostile environment, reading just your story, not knowing this. Mm-hmm. I mean, not hostile, maybe uncomfortable, but not like something that actively pushes you away. So it was just wondering.
What was the question? Sorry.
No. If you feel that kind of feeling of being a unwelcome guest was spilled into the story, like.
I think a bit there is this sort of hostile feeling in some pages. But maybe it was not the center of the view, of the general view. But I think there is a bit of this feeling, and I also talk about the nausea and this stuff. So
that yes.
So I hope you can feel it if you read it.
Yeah, for me, drawing Venice was like something really hard because it is, I mean, it's Venice and it's so, we were there for 1 week, not even that we had 3 or 4 days to draw, 3 days? 3 days, so maybe for this particular case, I just didn't do at all what I said before because it's in this workshop Venice I drew people because it was just impossible to do something interesting with that place, which is I was also surprised to really find it beautiful because normally when you have such a place that everybody says, oh, wow, Venice, then when you arrive you must be disappointed, but I was surprised not to be. And so yeah, I drew 3 stories. One with which just people on the boat, because we were getting out of this island every day and traveling to the city, and they just stayed on the boat because it's a bus, and it's so strange to when I take the bus in the cities I live, mostly Paris or the underground. It's not a nice moment. It's not a beautiful moment, and here you're in the boat in Venice. I wanted also to say something about the monuments, but the second story is we had in this island there was this church, and there was a group of young people who were making a restoration on and it was a bit strange because we were all wearing masks, but they were like wearing masks and gloves, and they were like all these white people going around on this island, and there was kind of funny characters, and also really young and taking care of this really old building. I thought it was a beautiful image. So, well, yeah.
For me, Venice, I think it was a bit like what Manuele said about the outside space being also an inside space. For me, it was really super obvious about this place, like right from the beginning. You feel like you're in a space that is not even really a space in itself, but like a representation of something, because also it looks like a maze, a labyrinth somehow. And so like labyrinth in itself is like kind of representation of the inside of a body, or like the guts and like pipes and place like that are never going straight, but always like going round, and then you never find your way, you get lost all the way. So for me it was kind of abstract place, Venice, and so and also the relation with the water is like very dialectic between like the water that is like emptiness and nothing, and the walls that are like reality and material reality, and so it creates kind of abstract reflections. So when we were in Venice, the sun was like super strong, it was like super warm, and so the shadows on the buildings were like really, really strong, and it was really created like just half buildings that were like all dark, and the other side of the buildings was just basically disappearing into light, and so that made that feelings even more vivid. So I wanted to show it really like that, like making even just the dark appear and the other like fade away.
I think it's really evident in your work for Venice. With this contrast between really huge and strong light and super harsh shadow.
Yeah, and I think that was inspired by Stefano Ricci, that told me about the movie Hackathon from Pasolini. Mm-hmm. And he said that we're doing this movie, Pasolini don't really know the technical stuff about movies, so it just went really rough to take the pictures, and the sun was really like taking all the spots in the picture, and you can just see like some kind of shape, like you have really the sun in your eyes all the time. And when the movie went out, like people were like, we don't even see anything, what is this shit? But yeah.
It's actually also there's another book by Lorenzo Mattotti. It's called Digging in the Water that represent Venice in this way, like black and white with very harsh shadow lines. And when I saw it, I thought it was one of the first renderings of Venice, far away from this image of Venice in the decadent, in the fog, you know, this all the Thomas Mann Death in Venice cliché. Venice is really full of contrast, more than other cities.
I was thinking while I was talking about the element that create the space, and I had to deal with the soundtrack of the exhibition. And while I was working, I collect enough near? Yeah. I collect a lot of sound from all the workshops, and especially in Venice, when I was listening to all the recordings, at some point there was this recording of the boat, of the water, and all the field recordings, and at some point a grandma or a female start yelling in dialect, really bad curse and bestemmie and other really specific word, and it immediately polarized the space, and I recognize my mental image of that space when I record it. It's like from one word or two words, so the space can also be built by tiny elements that are also cultural, as Manuele was saying. So, what's happening? Noise gig. And so I think also tiny element can build a huge sense of space and a precise space, like a specific sound or a specific characteristic.
Unfortunately, in this case, that specific sound was an implication. But no, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's often said that Italy is quite a chatty place where everybody's yelling, and you can. I mean, the soundscape of a place is almost always as important as the visual landscape of what you are seeing, and that is quite nice to point out, because in a way all of you did not did not took the easy way to represent this. I mean, in all of your works here, there are not a lot of words. I mean, the soundscape of the city emerges from the visual aspect of comic books, and so in a sense it reminds me of what we were saying earlier, to make the invisible visible through comics, which is kind of nice. Good job. I just have a question, but you can think of questions if you, I mean, you're encouraged to do it.
No,
So,
but I can say my experience of Venice, but now me and my family, we are residents since 1 week in Venice, so we live there, and we have maybe a bit deformed or different vision. But anyway, I will just say that when I came to Venice 1 year ago, escaping from the lockdown in Paris, we thought about doing 1 year in Venice and just to go through this tough period and then maybe go back to Paris, but eventually we stayed there. And I remember the first impression when I went to Venice is I felt like a snail, that, you know, the snail brings her home on her shoulder, no? So the home of the snail is made up proportionally for the snail. And I felt that I walked in this city in a space that was proportional with me, with my speed of walking, with my also dimensions. This is very striking when you go to Venice, for instance, that people can speak to each other from the street to the second floor, for instance. Very often they speak, and it's something I don't see very often in the cities. So, in the end, the thing about Venice for me that is crucial, and it makes this city one of the most modern cities in the world. More modern than it's actually futuristic, more modern, is that when you are in Venice, at least not for Omar, who was seasick all the time, if you like it, you feel what is the purpose of a city? I mean, the purpose of a city is not to damage the citizens. Is not to harm the people. The purpose of a city is to host the people. Right now, we escape in the nature. We say we go in the woods, but we will never be able to live in the woods. And when we used to live in the woods a long time ago, we started building up houses and building up cities because we need the cities. And when you're in Venice, you feel the meaning of a street, for instance. The street is not meant to take care of a car is driving over you. The meaning of a street is going from A to B, to cross people, to meet them. The meaning of a square is not to park cars, but to stay, to sit, to sell, to play for children. So all these elements that humans created, they're for humans, they're not against them. And this is something I repeat to myself all the time when I walk in Venice. This is what the city should become. Smaller, without cars, and actually proportion with the people who are inhabiting them.
For me, it's funny because every time I'm in Venice, I lost myself like 20 times. So. Like.
Yeah, getting lost in Venice is quite common. Did you get lost a lot?
Yes, all the time, but we had to walk a lot, so we didn't have so much time to get lost. But every time we went in the city, I think we did get lost. And also, I really felt the same way as Omar. I think there is something a bit like almost unnatural about this city that makes you feel dizzy a little bit, like just after a few days. And when one day we went to Lido, and there was just cars and ugly buildings and regular stuff. It felt quite good, actually, to have something that you could relate to, like usual reality somehow. Yes.
So I would like to ask to add a question to you, but in the meantime, I encourage you to think if you have something you want to ask them. And I'm reconnecting to what you were saying. It's kind of funny about living in the woods, because the workshop, the Invisible Lines workshop started with them living in the woods for a bit. So the first workshop, the one in Brumov, in Czech Republic, started off with the 12 of them, like walking for 10 days, and then drawing the landscapes and the history they experienced, physically going through those spaces, and like in a mirror way, in a sense, the last workshop was the contrary of that, I feel. I didn't do the workshop, of course, because I cannot draw, but so in the last workshop, the one in Strasbourg, called Borders, they were asked to chat with a lot of refugees, which were now in Strasbourg, and to listen to their stories and translate them into a page of journal, so to say. And so the 3 workshops started with a journey and ended up with listening to other journeys. And all of this, in a way, connects with this notion of experiencing or being told something about places and spaces and stuff like that. And so I wanted to ask you how did you worked on that in your pages? I mean, in the first workshop, the theme was the landscapes. In the last, it was not, but it's still a very, very powerful presence in all your stories. Both the one that recreate the journey that you were being told, and the one such as Clara's one that are more like. It's hard to describe your one. I really liked it, which you have this very big black page with a lot of text. But it's very powerful, the feeling of spatiality in that thing. But of course, I suppose you worked on that in a very different way, experiencing the place for yourself or being told to. So I just wanted to ask you. Was it different? Did you think about it? Was it something that you feel it's relevant, or maybe you say just?
I think somehow the presence of the space of the landscape was always there. Like, I mean, for me, like in the first story, the landscape is, of course, is the main theme, and in the second story, for me, there is a relationship with space and with rocks, and of course, also in the last one. In the last one, we meet. I mean, we met Wally, that is. Is from Kurdistan, but lives in Strasbourg, and has a pizzeria of Italian food. So that was my main theme. I was really interested in that guy. So I think, yeah, of course.
Yeah, well, with this third moment in Strasbourg, we were talking about it with Juraj and the people before. It was very different because we were in one place, and we had this subject of talking about these refugee stories, and for me it was really hard because it was. Well, a short time, and stories that are far from us. And for all the other workshops, I thought that it was kind of possible to enter to any topic, even if it's not something we used to explore, because we enter through our experience, and we can just. We can always show a point of view, but in this specific topic, I thought it was hard to enter through us into other stories that are far from us. So anyway, it was about sharing a point of view, and we were inside this place talking about people that we didn't met, so it was a bit. It was the only thing I could do to represent this difficulty and distance, and So as we can see in this page, we're really just people talking between them in this small, huge room, far from the people we're talking about. Yeah. But it was interesting to think about it. So, still.
Yes, I think I was feeling a little bit lost also during this workshop, but it was maybe the most difficult one because not many time and really very strong topic. And at the beginning, I really think, yes, this workshop was also related to space because all the stories we were reading of these migrants telling their journey was really the story of someone always going to a place and being forced to go to some other place and to go to some other place and again and again and again, because the place never fits to them. Like there is always something that is pushing them away to another place, and so that in itself is basically the structure of any story. Like especially in comic book, you can really just make a story by making somebody go to a place, to another place, and then to the final destination. And I would have wanted to tell it this way, but we didn't get the chance to really spend time with the people. So it was, yeah, as Clara said, really difficult to make this story ours and to speak in the voice of somebody else. So instead, I decided to try to tell how it's almost impossible to tell your story or to talk about all the things in an environment that will prevent you to really get to the point when this is a story that is so hard and intense and hard to reach for an audience. So, and like from both sides, it's a story that is hard to tell, and it's also a story that is hard to hear. And there is like something in between that we can get from this, but it's really like really thin. This is what I wanted to show in this workshop.
My workshop was along all my life, because I've been going from places in the last 22 years. So.
Do you have any questions? Raise your hand in that case. So I would have one last question. It's a very a very short one. They were pre-alerted of this. You were not, but I'm sure you can answer correctly. Which is so to summarize. We talked a lot about spaces, their importance in comics, and I mean, I hope it transpired that it's different for everybody. And so in a lot of different ways. I mean, it has a lot of different meaning, this stuff about places. And so I asked them to suggest a comic book to each and every one of us that for them links to this theme of places. And so I extend the question to you, Manuele, but you cannot say Mebius nor Mattotti. Because you're ready. If something comes to mind, I mean...
I have it. It is not Moebius and it is not Mattotti.
Okay, you can start. If
Guess. That is linked to spaces. Yes, of course I have it. Tension. Suspense. The comic is... The winner is... No, the comic is Little Nemo by Winsor McCay, the first comic of history, almost. It's well, it's very big, the ways in which way Little Nemo experienced through the space. There is the space of the paper. In Little Nemo, from the very first episodes, there are experiments on the comic structure, the structure of the page, that are still the most challenging structures of reading that I found in comics. And you can still use them and have incredible effects. For instance, there's this page where the bed of Little Nemo goes under, and then in the same time the panels, they become vertical and even more vertical, and the landscape becomes even more vertical. There are some kind of huge mushrooms that grows bigger and bigger with the growth of the panels. And as the bed of Little Nemo is going down, you're also going down, reading the book and following Nemo until the end of the page. And then the mushrooms, eventually they fall, so the panels, they shrink again, and they become normal again, and then, of course, little Nemo wakes up and says, oh, it was a bad dream, I ate too much fondue yesterday. But then there is, of course, a lot of play around spaces. You know, little Nemo is always invited to the slumberland. No? The King Orpheus has a daughter. The daughter annoys herself, so the King Orpheus always called Nemo each evening to his reign, slumberland, to play with his daughter, so to have a companion, a friend. And so little Nemo engages himself to this trip to slumberland. But when he goes to slumberland and several things occurs, then in the end, there's an incredible twist in the story that Winsor McCay makes that shows that the slumberland is just a decor, how do you say it in una scenografia? It's just a flat scenery as the one that you see for the movies in Cinecittà. There, it's just flat. This one. So all the slumberland at one moment is just like two-dimensional, and on the back on the slumber, la terra dei sogni, slumberland, the land of the dreams. On the back side, there's a true suburb of slumberland that is like the suburbs of New York, like the Bronx or Harlem, where the poor kids live. And then little Nemo finds himself like transported in something that is incredibly realistic for the time, so that's like a comic reportage, and he becomes the wizard, the little wizard of the poor people that welcomes him like a magician. So this kinds of play of illusion, like a prestidigitazione, come cazzo si dice? Sempre in francese, gioco di prestigio that Winsor McCay does with space. It's incredible. It's something that never stops. You know, Little Nemo is one of these comics that everybody knows it, but seldom is read from the beginning to the end. And I suggest you to read it, to read everything from the first episode to the last one, because it's a huge building that Winsor McCay builds every week with 1 page a week. So without any storyboard, without knowing where he's going, it's a building that builds that goes up like that and goes everywhere a comic artist can go, I guess. And it's almost the first comic in modern comic history, I would say. So I would say it goes even more far than Moebius and Mattotti.
It probably does, with all the respect for the... If you have any suggestion, but if you... I know it's a hard question, so go for it.
I think I will say Act of God of Giacomo Nanni. I really liked how he gave a voice to the earthquake and the switch that happened between the background and the subject. There is always this switch, like objects that talk, and especially the earthquake. Especially the earthquake that thinks and talk and has knowledge in a way. So it became a subject.
Yeah. Completely agree.
And also this book. It's great.
Number one.
Stop it, Omar, stop it. I would say Garden by Yoshi Yokoyama, because it's really basically just spaces. Like there is not even no stories. It's just characters that are entering a garden in the beginning of the story, and then for like 300 pages they will just go from one place to another and like discover what is inside the garden, and it's like just places of beauty that are shown by the author. With like I think he said he wanted to show the perspective, like it was not a human perspective, but like in the eye of an insect that is having no judgment on what is happening, but just trying to take a look at the world and travel to this world in a very poetic way. And yeah, I think it's my favorite book. Yeah.
Favorite at all?
Yes.
Nice. Okay. So if you don't have any question, I would like to thank you again. I think this. I mean, we say a lot that reading stories. It's one of the reasons we read stories is to go elsewhere, and usually it's said in a way like in an escapistic way, so just to escape from reality. But I think this. Through your stories and the way you talked about it, I mean, there is another meaning of it, and is to kind of experience these places that we almost never talk about in this way in comics, through the eyes of the eyes of and the drawings of you. So thank you so much for the insight and the, I mean the insight is probably the correct word. So thank you so much for being here, Manuele, Omar, Clara, and Léopold. Thank you all for being here. Thanks again to Creative Europe for making this happen, and for the Institut Français to help us get you all here. For the last time, promised, signal you that all the books are available at the bookshop, and they are more than willing to sign them to you. Please check them out and read them, and please go check out the exhibition. It's amazing. So, thank you.
Grazie Matteo.
Giusto. One last thing, we have to sanitize the room. So please follow the instructions and go outside from this side. So, okay. So, dobbiamo